Good day everyone, welcome back to another video. For today's discussion, we will talk about nonverbal communication. But first, let's answer the question, what is communication? We have to remember that communication is considered as the act of conveying or sending a message to others. It can be in the form of verbal communication, which refers to the use of words in order to deliver or send a message to other people. Or nonverbal communication, which refers to the use of gestures, actions, facial expressions, body movements, etc. In terms of nonverbal communication, we have to take note that there are different types, namely paralanguage, flowers, colors, time or chronemics, space, also known as proxemics, touch or haptics, gestures, facial expressions, and of course, posture and appearance. The first type of nonverbal communication is paralanguage. Paralanguage refers to the manner of how something is said or delivered rather than what is said. Paralanguage puts emphasis on the role of tone and volume of the speaker's voice and the pacing of his speech. For example, the expression "I love you" is considered sweet and romantic. However, if the manner on how it is delivered makes use of an angry tone or loud volume, chances are that the listener might get confused and misinterpret the message, which in turn leads to miscommunication. Therefore, it is important to know that paralanguage places importance on the manner of how a speaker delivers a message. With this in mind, a speaker needs to make sure that his manner of delivering a message is in accordance with the context of his message in order to avoid miscommunication. But first, let's answer this question. What is context in communication? In communication, speech context refers to the environment or the situation where the communication happens. It is important to recognize the speech context as this allows people to determine how they need to communicate with other people. Let's look at this example. The expression "ladies and gentlemen, we are gathered here today" would have a different meaning or interpretation depending on the situation. In the first context, the mood or atmosphere is joyful or celebratory since it is a wedding celebration. On the other hand, the mood is more serious and formal since the context is about a formal meeting or conference. Given these examples, it is vital to remember that the speech context helps people to determine how to interact and communicate in certain situations. Up next, we have the language of flowers. The language of flowers refers to the use of flowers to send a message to other people. It is important to note that using flowers as a means of sending a message is very much influenced by gender and cultural factors. When giving flowers, we need to remember that different kinds of flowers have different kinds of meanings. For example, sending tulips would mean a declaration of love. Sending lilacs would mean that you are expressing a love that is innocent and pure. We have to also remember that since different kinds of flowers have different kinds of meanings, a flower bouquet is different from a flower wreath. Even though both are examples of flower arrangements, they are used differently in different occasions. Thus, it is necessary to also consider the context or situation to avoid sending the wrong message or getting misinterpreted by other people. Up next, we have colors. Colors are very symbolic as they have certain meanings based on the influence of gender as well as culture and tradition. People use colors as a means of expressing their emotions or ideals. They aim to send a message with the colors that they use. In psychology, Certain colors are associated with different kinds of emotions or moods. For example, bright colors are often associated with positivity, whereas red means passion or anger, while blue is usually associated with calmness or loneliness. In the Philippines, the colors of the flags also have different meanings. Blue would mean justice and peace, red would mean passion and patriotism, and white symbolizes purity and hope. Next, we have the language of time, also known as chronemics. We have to remember that time is a concept that is viewed differently according to certain cultures. How people use their time reflects the person's character, professionalism, sincerity, etc. For example, when coming to school or work, those people who come earlier or on time are usually favored by others as compared to those who are consistently tardy. We have to remember that in any kind of situation, culture, or context, being aware of the time is necessary, as this is a subtle way of sending a message about who you are as a person, thus influencing the impression that other people might have on you. Up next, we have the language of space, also known as proxemics. Proxemics is a form of nonverbal communication which deals with the use of space to convey a message. In proxemics, the distance between people is influenced by their attitudes and behaviors toward each other. This means that the more comfortable you are with the person, the closer the distance is between you two. You could usually see this between close friends or family members. On the other hand, when people have negative attitudes towards other people, they tend to be distant. Of course, if you're not comfortable with the other person, you would want to observe as much distance from him or her to avoid having any physical contact that might trigger further conflict. Up next, we talk about the language of touch, also known as haptics. The language of touch is one of the most powerful of the types of nonverbal communication. What separates haptics from other forms of nonverbal communication is the existence of physical contact between the sender and the receiver. Actions like hugging other people or shaking hands establish firm connections between the two people involved. However, we have to be aware that certain places or countries have restrictions when it comes to physical contact or physical touch. This may be due to the influence of gender or culture. Regardless, it is necessary for us to be aware so as to avoid miscommunication. With this in mind, much like other forms of nonverbal communication, it is important to be familiar with the context and cultural influences of the people that we are interacting with. Another type of nonverbal communication are gestures. Gestures are considered to be the most common form of nonverbal communication used across various cultures. Now, depending on the situation, certain gestures are used to emphasize, regulate, illustrate, or symbolize a concept or idea. We have to note that the gestures themselves are already sending messages to the people who would see them. Gestures like thumbs up, the more recent and trending mini heart, and the peace signs are some of the most common examples. Thus, we have to be responsible with regard to the kind of gestures that we are using to avoid being disrespectful to other people. Now at this point, let's answer this question. What are the different kinds of gestures? Depending on the situation and the communicative context, certain gestures may be used. Gestures may be classified as either emphasizing, regulating, illustrating, or emblems. Emphasizing gestures are used to place emphasis on key points. Using these gestures, makes the speech more interesting and understandable. Regulating gestures are used to control a certain situation or moderate the flow of communication between people. We usually see this when those in command or in authority would give instructions or directions to other people regarding what needs to be done. Illustrating gestures are used to show size, height, distance, or similar qualities that express measurement. Illustrating gestures are usually used when we want to describe something to make a particular idea or concept clearer from the perspective of the listener. While emblems are gestures associated with certain meanings influenced by culture, politics, and society. Emblems are considered to be symbols or symbolisms that reflect the principles or beliefs of a particular person or certain groups of people. Next, we have facial expressions. Facial expressions is a type of nonverbal communication that assists the speaker in ensuring that the listener can understand the message better. Remember that different kinds of facial expressions would already have different meanings. Using facial expressions helps determine the sincerity and seriousness of the speaker when communicating with the audience or listener. We have to remember that when delivering a message, the facial expressions that we have would help reinforce the message that we are sending. We usually see this in news reporters when they are delivering serious news. Thus, it is necessary that our expressions would be appropriate to the type of message that we are delivering to other people. And lastly, we have posture and appearance. Whenever we engage in communication, it is important to always consider how we look like in front of other people. A speaker's posture and appearance would reflect his or her confidence in terms of speaking to other people. When speaking in front of a group of people, it is important to maintain self-composure and exude confidence just by simply presenting yourself. This would help capture the attention of the audience, which would either motivate or demotivate them to listen to what you are saying. Based on the given examples, someone who looks nervous and is fidgety might not be as effective in capturing the audience as compared to someone who confidently stands and lets other people know that he is knowledgeable of what he is talking about. Thus, we have to remember that proper posture and appearance would affect the communication process, as this will influence the interest of the audience to listen to the speaker. In a nutshell, communication is not only done verbally. People also communicate through nonverbal means. Nonverbal communication can serve as an alternative means of communicating to people, as well as a way to assist a speaker to successfully send his message to other people. And lastly, being familiar with the different forms of nonverbal communication would help us become more effective communicators.